At number 5, it's the Roman Egypt Boy Scouts. To learn about ancient childhood in the town of Oxyrhynchus in Roman Egypt, historians are examining about 7,500 documents believed to be from the 6th century and earlier. With over 25,000 residents, Oxyrhynchus functioned as the Roman administrative center for its area. The town was also a powerhouse for the weaving industry in Egypt. From papyri excavated from an Oxyrhynchus garbage dump a century ago, historians found that Roman Egypt had its own version of the Boy Scouts, a youth organization known as a gymnasium where young men were taught to become good citizens. Boys from freeborn Egyptian, Greek, and Roman families were qualified to join. Back then, that demographic was wealthy, limiting membership in the gymnasium to boys from about 10–25% of the town's families. For the boys who were eligible, enrollment in the gymnasium represented the start of their transition to adulthood. Men became full adults when they got married in their early 20s. Women, who usually married in their late teenage years, prepared for their roles by working in their homes. Boys of freeborn citizens who didn't qualify for the gymnasium might begin working as preteens, possibly as apprentices under contract for 2 to 4 years. Many of the contracts were in the weaving industry. The historians did find one apprenticeship contract for a girl, but they believe her situation was unique in that she was an orphan who needed to pay off her late father's debts. Slave children were able to have the same types of apprenticeship contracts as freeborn boys, but unlike freeborn boys, who lived with their families, slave children could be sold. They would live with their owners or masters, even if that separated the children from their parents. Documents revealed that some slave children were sold. At number 4, it's the mystery of the Masjid. In this story, our discovery of the past came from our curiosity about the future. Images taken from space in 2011 revealed a giant Masjid in the Ural Mountains that's believed to predate the famous Nazca Lines in Peru by thousands of years. The type of stonework, known as lithic chipping, suggests that this structure may have been built as long ago as 3000 or 4000 BC. The structure is around 275 meters, 900 feet long with antlers, 4 legs, and a long muzzle. Facing north, the geodglyph could have been seen from a nearby ridge in prehistoric times as a shiny, white figure against a green grass background. Currently, it's coated with soil. Excavators have been amazed by the elaborate construction. The hoof is made of small crushed stones and clay, explained Stanislav Grigoriev of the Russian Academy of Sciences. It seems to me there were very low walls and narrow passages among them. The same situation in the area of a muzzle, crushed stones and clay, 4 small broad walls, and 3 passages. Researchers also uncovered evidence of 2 fireplaces at the site, each used just once. They believe these fireplaces may have been used in an important ritual, but there are so many unanswered questions, such as who built this geodglyph and why. There's no archaeological proof of a culture advanced enough to build such a structure at that time in this region, but the researchers think their most interesting discovery concerns children. Excavators found over 150 tools at the site, 2–17 centimeters, 1–7 in long. They believe that children, working alongside the adults in a community project, helped to build the Masjid. It doesn't appear to be child slave labor but rather a joint effort with shared values. At number 3, it's the Children of the Clouds. In July 2013, archaeologists spotted 35 sarcophagi, each about 70 centimeters, 30 in, tall, in a high-altitude area in the Amazonas region of Peru. The small sarcophagi were thought to contain children of the mysterious Chachapoyas culture, also known as warriors of the clouds because they lived in the cloud forests of the mountains. Between the 9th century and 1475, when they were conquered by the Incas, the Chachapoya carved villages and farm terraces into the steep mountain slopes, raised guinea pigs and llamas, and fought among themselves. Their culture was eventually destroyed by diseases such as smallpox that were introduced by European explorers. We know very little about the Chachapoya and their children because they left no written language. but Spanish documents of the 1500s portray them as fierce warriors. Pedro César de Leon, who chronicled the history of Peru, also described their appearance: "They are the whitest and most handsome of all the people that I have seen in Indies, and the wives were so beautiful that because of their gentleness, many of them deserve to be the Inca's wives and to also be taken to the Sun Temple." But these warriors of the clouds did leave one remnant of their culture: their mummified dead, left in fascinatingly strange sarcophagi placed on high ledges overlooking the valleys below. The clay coffins were placed upright and decorated to look like people with paint, feathered tunics, jewelry, and even trophy skulls, but no one knows why the children were buried in their own cemetery, separate from the adults. It's also unclear why all the small sarcophagi are facing west, which is not normal for a. At number 2, it's Gifts for the Lake Gods. Ancient villages from the Bronze Age were scattered around the alpine lakes of Germany and Switzerland. When some of these areas were excavated in the 1970s and 1980s, archaeologists found over 160 houses 2,603, 800 years old. These lakefront homes often flooded. To escape the rising waters, lake dwellers would move to dry land. When conditions improved, they'd return to the lakefronts. But these lake dwellers did adapt their lakefront properties for the flooding threat. First, they built their houses on stilts or strong foundations of wood. Second, they enclosed their houses with wooden fences. Third, they surrounded their villages at the edges of the fences with children's skulls on skeletons dug. According to archaeologists, these skulls may have been gifts for the lake gods to prevent flooding. Some of the skulls revealed head trauma from clubs or axes, but researchers don't believe the children were live sacrifices. They believe the kids died a lot earlier, perhaps in warfare, and then were offered to the gods later. At one site, these children, most of whom were younger than 10 years old, were buried at the high water mark of a flood. But researchers haven't found the graves of most of the lake dwellers, so they don't know how or tie. At number 1, it's the infant who waits for eternity. Over 40 years ago, two brothers were hunting in Greenland when they stumbled upon the grave sites of 500-year-old mummies, naturally preserved by the Arctic environment, from the old Inuit settlement of Kinakitsok. Beneath an outcrop of rock, two separate graves contain 8 bodies in all, 6 women and 2 young children, each of whom were dressed for hunting. Inuit beliefs at the time required their people to be ready to hunt even after they died. The Greenland mummies, as they're called, revealed a lot of information about the people's lifestyles but still left us with many questions. Archaeologists established familial relationships between some of the group, but they weren't buried according to family lines, which is the first mystery. They were also buried without men, which is another mystery because it's against Inuit custom. All but one of the women had tutus, which was fashionable at that time. They had all been well fed before their deaths, with most of their diet coming from the sea. The conditions of their bodies revealed that the women worked with animal skins and sinew. The causes of death appeared to be illness for the older child and 2 of the women, but it wasn't clear how the other adults died or if they died at the same time. But it's the youngest child, the 6-month-old baby boy, who has the most poignant story. He appears to have been buried alive, his face upturned as though waiting for the mother who would never reach for him again. The custom of the Inuit at that time was to bury a child alive or suffocate him if another woman wasn't available to care for him after his mother's death. By burying the child with his mother, it was believed that they would travel together to the afterlife.